A lot of you will carve pumpkins or jack-o'-lanterns for this Halloween. It's a symbol that's associated with this holiday more than anything else. Even Jack Skellington is called the Pumpkin King. But do you know where the tradition came from? It came from the Celtic lands, which are today Wales, Scotland, and Ireland, and England. Back then, they would celebrate the feast of Samhain, which is a Celtic word which roughly translates into summer's end. And this was the time when they looked around and they saw that the fields had harvested, nights were growing longer, leaves were falling from the tree, and the world of the living seemed to be entering the world of the dead. Well, they would get together on what was known as the last of the harvests, which some people called the blood harvest, which has a spooky and sinister name to it. But it really represented the time when they would butcher the animals that probably wouldn't make it through the winter. They might be too young, too small, too old, or too weak, and they didn't have a lot of resources to be able to support them, so they would butcher the animals and put up as much meat as they could for the winter. Now, back in the old days, they didn't have food preservation like we did, and so they would have big feasts to make sure that the food didn't go to waste. And while they were gathering around in the halls and everything, they would remember all of their relatives that weren't there from the previous year. They'd tell stories, and of course, on times when the nights were so dark and long, the wind would whip through bare branches, dry leaves would scuttle about. It's easy to imagine that certain things were walking around in the darkness that you did not want around. So they would try and scare them off. In the old days, they would take turnips and they would hollow them out and they would carve scary faces and they would put live coals in there so the glowing embers would shine through the eyes and keep away all scary and malevolent spirits. When people came to the New World and they discovered the Native American pumpkin, the tradition continued, only now they were bigger, they were brighter, easier to carve, but a coal wouldn't do the trick. You had to put in a candle. And so they would put on scary faces and they would leave them in the windows or on the doors to scare away anything that might wish them harm and to guide all the ones that might wish them well. So when you carve your jack-o'-lantern this year and you set it out, remember, you're taking part in a very old custom that's even older than Christmas itself. And you're keeping memories alive, making new ones, and welcoming your ancestors home.